Good morning, I'm Craig DeGrelli. It's Monday, December 30th, 2024, and these are your Unbiased Updates. Death of a president. Jimmy Carter passes away in Plains, Georgia at 100 years old. This morning, tributes are pouring in to the 39th American president, as many also pay tribute to his humanitarian efforts after he left the White House. And a deadly plane crash in South Korea. The stunning images as the Boeing 737 skids down the runway and slams into a wall. This morning, what the investigation is focusing on.
From the Straight Arrow News Studio, bringing the stories that matter to you from across the United States and around the world, these are today's Unbiased Updates.
This morning, we are remembering former President Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer from Plains, Georgia, who went on to become the 39th President of the United States and the longest-lived president in American history. Carter, who after leaving the White House focused on humanitarian causes around the world, passed away on Sunday at 100 years old. Our Lauren Taylor has more on his life and legacy.
Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, a humanitarian and global advocate for peace, has died at the age of 100. The man from Plains, who held office from 1977 to 1981, leaves behind a legacy that stretches beyond the Oval Office. From his work in human rights to his post-presidency activism, he was seen by many as a man of profound integrity and compassion. Born in Plains, Georgia, on October 1st, 1924, James Earl Carter Jr. graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He served 7 years as a naval officer before returning to Georgia to manage his family's peanut farm. He got into state politics in the early 1960s, and in 1970 was elected governor of Georgia. In 1976, Carter, a relatively unknown figure outside of Georgia, surprised the nation by winning the Democratic nomination for president. He ran as an honest Washington outsider in the wake of the Watergate scandal. He went on to defeat President Gerald Ford, becoming the first president from the Deep South since the Civil War. Carter's presidency faced several challenges. The country faced rising inflation, an energy crisis, and high unemployment. And there was also the Iran hostage crisis, in which 52 American diplomats were held for 444 days, a defining moment that contributed to his loss to Ronald Reagan in 1980. But there were achievements, too. Most notable was the Camp David Accords in 1978, where he brokered an historic peace agreement between Egypt and Israel. Despite his struggles in office, it was Carter's post-presidency that seemed to define him most. After leaving the White House, he founded the Carter Center in 1982, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing human rights, fighting diseases, and promoting peace around the world. His work with Habitat for Humanity was another reflection of his dedication to service. Well into his 90s, Carter stayed active in the work to build homes for those in need. In 2002, Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, recognized for his decades-long efforts to promote democracy, human rights, and peace. In their official announcement, the Nobel Committee noted his untiring effort to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to advance democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. In October, after becoming the first former president to reach the age of 100, he made headlines when he participated in the election, casting his ballot in Georgia for Kamala Harris. Throughout his life, Carter was a devoted family man. He and his wife, Rosalind, who died in November 2023, were married for more than 75 years, a love story that endured from the small town of Plains to the international stage. Together, they worked side by side in their many charitable endeavors. Today, the world mourns the loss of a statesman who believed in the possibility of a better world. Jimmy Carter is survived by his 4 children and numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren. A private funeral is expected to be held in Plains, Georgia.
Our Lauren Taylor reporting. In addition to the private ceremony, there will also be a state funeral for the former president in Washington, as well as public observances in Atlanta. President Joe Biden issued a proclamation on Sunday night declaring January 9th as a national day of mourning. Tributes from all around the world for former President Jimmy Carter have been coming in since his passing on Sunday afternoon, including from President Biden, President-elect Donald Trump, and other former presidents. Biden delivered remarks broadcast live Sunday night, calling Carter a remarkable leader and a dear friend.
What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, Millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds. Just look at his life's work. He worked to eradicate disease, not at home, not just at home, but around the world. He forged peace, advanced civil rights, human rights, promoted free and fair elections around the world. He built housing and for the homeless with his own hands. And his compassion and moral clarity lifted people up and changed lives and saved lives all over the globe. We may never see his like again. We'd all do well to try to be a little more like Jimmy Carter.
President-elect Trump releasing a statement saying the challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Former President Bill Clinton saying, quote, from his commitment to civil rights as a state senator and governor of Georgia, to his efforts as president to protect our natural resources in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, make energy conservation a national priority, return the Panama Canal to Panama, and secure peace between Egypt and Israel at Camp David, to his post-presidential efforts at the Carter Center supporting honest elections, advancing peace, combating disease, and promoting democracy, to his and Rosalind's devotion and hard work at Habitat for Humanity, he worked tirelessly for a better, fairer world, end quote. Former President George W. Bush saying Jimmy Carter was a man of deeply held convictions, adding his efforts to leave behind a better world didn't end with his presidency. His work with Habitat for Humanity and the Carter Center set an example of service that will inspire Americans for generations. And former President Barack Obama saying President Carter believes some things were more important than re-election, things like integrity, respect, and compassion, because Jimmy Carter believed, as deeply as he believed anything, that we are all created in God's image. You can find more of our coverage on the death of former President Carter on our website, san.com, and the Straight Arrow News app. Turning to international news this morning, we are learning more about a fiery plane crash in South Korea that left 179 people dead in one of the country's worst aviation disasters. It happened Sunday at the international airport 180 miles south of Seoul. The jetliner skidded off the runway into a concrete fence and burst into flames after its landing gear apparently failed to deploy. Only 2 people survived. South Korean officials say they were crew members and did not appear to have life-threatening injuries. Not long before the crash, the control tower issued a warning about birds and gave the crew permission to land in a different area. In fact, the pilot reported a bird strike, but the exact cause of the crash has not yet been determined. Officials say the crew also sent out a distress signal shortly before the crash. South Korean transportation officials say it could take months to figure out exactly what happened. The plane that crash landed was a Boeing 737-800, marking yet another setback when it comes to disasters and safety for the plane maker. Back here in the U.S., at least 4 people are dead after a storm system tore across the South over the weekend. National Weather Service meteorologists received dozens of reports of tornado damage across Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Crews are now doing surveys to assess the damage. The NWS confirmed at least 5 tornadoes hit near Houston, Texas on Saturday, killing 1 woman and destroying or damaging dozens of homes. A man in North Carolina died in what a state trooper described as, quote, a freak accident after a tree fell on the pickup truck he was driving. The severe weather killed 2 people in Mississippi, while at least 10 other people were injured across the state. 2 men from Oregon were found dead in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in southwestern Washington on Saturday after they disappeared last week while searching for Sasquatch, also known as Bigfoot. Sasquatch is a mythical creature said to inhabit forests in North America. A relative reported the men missing Christmas Day after they failed to return from their search when they said they would. Authorities say the men appear to have died from exposure and were not prepared for the brutally cold weather. The men have only been identified as a 37-year-old and a 59-year-old from Portland. Finally this morning, it was a battle at the box office over the holiday weekend between a fast-moving hedgehog and a brave lion. In the end, Disney's Mufasa, the Lion King, overtook Sony's Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on the Christmas box office leaderboard. The Lion King prequel edged out the Sonic sequel over the 5-day stretch, bringing in nearly $64 million, with Sonic garnering just under $60 million. However, if you were to only look at traditional box office numbers, it was Sonic that came out on top, $38 million to $37 million, meaning in the end, both hedgehogs and lions came out winners in the box office battle. Those are your unbiased updates for this Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. For all of us here at Straight Arrow News, I'm Craig DeGrelli. Have a great day.